Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the darkest corners of history, classified horrors governments never wanted us to see. We're talking secret experiments, mind control, human testing, real people, real nightmares. These aren't just rumors. These are the stories that refuse to stay buried no matter how hard they tried to hide them. So buckle up. We're exploring 3 of the most disturbing secret government projects that went catastrophically wrong. The kind of wrong that scars history and the people caught in the crosshairs. This is the stuff of nightmares, but it's real. Let's get into it. First up, MK Ultra. A name that conjures images of clandestine operations and ethical boundaries pushed to their absolute limit. The CIA's infamous mind control project. A dark stain on the agency's history, a period marked by paranoia and a willingness to explore the most disturbing avenues of research. In the 1950s and 60s, Cold War paranoia was at its peak. The world was divided, and the threat of nuclear annihilation loomed large, fueling anxieties and shaping government policy. The US government feared Soviet brainwashing and wanted to develop their own mind control techniques. They believed the Soviets had made significant progress in this area, and the US felt compelled to catch up, no matter the cost. MK Ultra's goal? What were they really trying to achieve behind closed doors, shielded from public scrutiny? Manipulate human behavior using drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture. To break down a person's will, erase their memories, and rebuild them into something else entirely. LSD was their drug of choice, a mind-altering substance that promised to unlock the secrets of the human psyche, or so they thought. They dosed people. CIA employees, military personnel, sometimes willingly but often unknowingly becoming pawns in this dangerous game. Mental patients, prisoners, individuals already marginalized and vulnerable, making them easy targets for exploitation. Sex workers, often without consent. The very foundation of medical ethics was shattered in the pursuit of these dubious goals. Vulnerable people became unwitting test subjects. Their lives were irrevocably altered, their minds and bodies subjected to unimaginable horrors. The trauma was unimaginable. The psychological scars ran deep, leaving lasting damage that would haunt these individuals for the rest of their lives. One of the most notorious sub-projects, a particularly egregious example of the program's depravity. Operation Midnight Climax. The CIA set up brothels, creating a network of secret locations where their experiments could be conducted under the guise of ordinary life. Lured men in, unsuspecting individuals drawn into a web of deceit and manipulation. Dosed them with LSD, without their knowledge or consent, turning them into unwitting participants in a bizarre and unethical experiment, and watched through one-way mirrors, observing their reactions, documenting their behavior, all in the name of scientific inquiry, or so they claimed. The aim? What was the ultimate goal of this elaborate and disturbing charade? Study the effects of drugs in real-world settings, to understand how LSD affected people in everyday situations, away from the controlled environment of a laboratory, and see if they could use sex and drugs for blackmail or information extraction. To weaponize human weakness, to exploit vulnerabilities for political gain. The psychological damage was severe. The consequences of these experiments were devastating and long-lasting. Paranoia, memory loss, breakdowns. The victims suffered a range of debilitating symptoms, their lives shattered by the CIA's reckless pursuit of mind control. Victims were left alone, abandoned by the very people who had caused their suffering, left to pick up the pieces of their broken lives, often labeled unstable, with no answers. Their experiences dismissed, their concerns ignored, leaving them feeling isolated and betrayed. Frank Olson, a biochemist, a dedicated scientist who found himself caught in the crosshairs of MK Ultra, was dosed without his knowledge, a betrayal of trust that would have tragic consequences. Days later, he fell to his death, a shocking and mysterious end to a promising career. Officially a suicide, the authorities quickly closed the case, but questions remained. But suspicions of murder linger. A cloud of doubt hangs over the circumstances of his death, fueling conspiracy theories and raising uncomfortable questions about the CIA's involvement. MK Ultra wasn't a small operation. It was a sprawling, multifaceted program with a vast network of participants and resources. It spanned at least 80 institutions, a testament to the scale and ambition of the project. Universities, hospitals, prisons, places where vulnerable individuals could be easily accessed and manipulated. The CIA funneled money through front organizations to conceal the true source of funding and avoid scrutiny, tricking or recruiting researchers, exploiting their ambition, their curiosity, or their naivete to further the CIA's agenda. They tried everything, pushing the boundaries of science and ethics in their relentless pursuit of mind control. Hypnosis, sensory deprivation, techniques designed to break down a person's sense of self and make them more susceptible to suggestion. Electroshock, drugs, methods that inflicted immense pain and suffering, leaving lasting psychological scars. The experiments were often unscientific and cruel. Driven by a desperate desire for results, the researchers often disregarded basic ethical principles and inflicted unnecessary suffering on their subjects. The results? What did they actually achieve after all this effort and all this suffering? No reliable mind control breakthroughs. Despite all the resources and effort poured into the project, they failed to achieve their primary objective. Just ruined lives. The only tangible outcome of MKUltra was the destruction of countless lives and the infliction of unimaginable suffering. When investigations began in the 1970s, the truth began to emerge, slowly and painfully. The CIA destroyed most MKUltra files, a desperate attempt to cover their tracks and bury the evidence of their wrongdoing. Only a few documents survived by accident, a stroke of luck that allowed investigators to piece together some of the truth. Congressional hearings exposed the truth. The public finally learned the shocking details of MKUltra and the extent of the CIA's abuse of power. There were apologies, some settlements, a small measure of compensation for the victims of this horrific program, but no real justice for most victims. The scars remained, the trauma lingered, and the sense of betrayal never faded. The legacy of MKUltra is chilling, a stark reminder of the potential for abuse when power is unchecked and ethical boundaries are ignored. A government willing to sacrifice its own citizens in the name of national security. A betrayal of the social contract, a violation of the fundamental rights of the people. The question remains. The unanswered questions continue to haunt us, casting a shadow of doubt over the actions of our government. Did it really stop, or did the program simply evolve, adapting to new technologies and new challenges, or just go deeper underground, hidden from public view, operating in the shadows, beyond the reach of accountability? MKUltra shattered trust in government, eroding the public's faith in the institutions that are supposed to protect them, and left a legacy of fear and suspicion, a climate of paranoia and distrust that continues to shape our perception of government and its activities. It's a dark chapter, a stain on our history that we must never forget, a warning of what happens when power goes unchecked, when those in authority believe they are above the law and can act with impunity. The idea that your own government could use you as a test subject without your knowledge or consent is a terrifying prospect. Is the stuff of nightmares, a scenario that should never be allowed to happen again. And if they did this, if they were capable of such atrocities in the past, it begs the question, what else are they capable of? What other secrets are they hiding? What other abuses are they perpetrating in the shadows? MKUltra is a reminder, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of government transparency. Secrecy breeds abuse, and that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and the truth always finds a way out. No matter how hard they try to suppress it, the truth will eventually be revealed. The victim's suffering can't be undone. The damage is permanent. The trauma will never fully heal. But their stories must be told. Their voices must be heard so that we can learn from the past and prevent such atrocities from happening again. We have to remember the lessons of history, the mistakes of the past, or risk repeating the same horrors. We must remain vigilant, always questioning authority and demanding accountability. MKUltra isn't just history. It's a living reminder of the fragility of freedom and the importance of protecting our rights. It's a lesson in the dangers of unchecked power, a lesson we must never forget. The scars remain, a testament to the enduring impact of MKUltra on the lives of its victims, and the questions linger, unresolved mysteries that continue to fuel speculation and distrust. What else is hidden in the shadows? What other secrets are waiting to be uncovered? That's the legacy of MKUltra, a dark and disturbing chapter in American history. Fear, distrust, and a profound sense of betrayal. And a warning to us all. A warning to be vigilant, to be skeptical, and to never blindly trust those in power. Never stop questioning. Always demand answers. Never forget. The past is a prologue, and we must learn from its mistakes. Let's move on to another dark corner of history, another example of power gone astray. Next, Project Artichoke. A name that sounds innocuous, perhaps even charming. But behind that name lies the CIA's earlier equally sinister experiment, a chilling precursor to the better-known MK Ultra. Launched in the early 1950s at the height of Cold War paranoia, Artichoke focused intensely on interrogation techniques, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable. The core objective was simple, yet terrifying: how to break people, extract secrets from their minds, and even erase memories, leaving them blank slates. The ultimate goal? To control someone so completely that they'd act against their own will, becoming puppets in the hands of the agency. They wanted to override fundamental human instincts, even those related to self-preservation. To achieve this, they used hypnosis, forced drug addiction, creating dependencies to manipulate subjects, and so-called truth serums like sodium pentothal and the mind-altering LSD. Subjects were often the most vulnerable members of society: prisoners, refugees, displaced and seeking safety, and suspected agents caught in the crosshairs of international espionage. These were people with no power to resist, no voice to protest. Artichoke teams operated in secret facilities, hidden from public view, using brutal methods that defied any sense of human decency. They employed sensory deprivation, forced drugging, often without the subject's knowledge or consent, and relentless psychological torture. They tried to implant false memories, of absolute control. The victims' suffering was real, their pain etched into the fabric of history, and the scars remain, a testament to the enduring consequences of these experiments. Artichoke's story is a chilling reminder, a cautionary tale for the ages, that the pursuit of control, when divorced from ethical considerations, can lead to unimaginable cruelty and lasting damage. We must never forget what was done in the name of security, the price paid for these misguided endeavors. The truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges our beliefs. Let's keep going deeper into the rabbit hole. Now, we leave the CIA behind, a world of covert operations and hidden agendas. We venture into a different realm of darkness, one that unfolded on a global stage during a time of immense conflict, and travel to Imperial Japan, World War II. A nation driven by expansionist ambitions, engaged in a brutal war across Asia and the Pacific. Unit 731, a name that evokes chilling images of scientific depravity and unimaginable suffering. This was not about mind control or subtle manipulation of the human psyche. This was biological and chemical warfare, a calculated effort to weaponize disease and toxins against both enemy combatants and civilian populations, and human experimentation on a scale that defies belief. A systematic program of torture and murder disguised as scientific research. Unit 731, led by Shiro Ishii, a microbiologist and lieutenant general in the Imperial Japanese Army. A man who would become synonymous with unspeakable cruelty. Operated in occupied Manchuria, far from the scrutiny of international observers and the constraints of ethical considerations. Officially, it was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, a deceptive title designed to conceal its true purpose. In reality, it was a house of horrors, a place where the most basic principles of human decency were systematically violated. Their victims? Who were the individuals subjected to these horrific experiments? Mostly Chinese civilians and POWs, innocent people caught in the crossfire of war and subjected to unimaginable suffering. But also Russians, Koreans, Mongolians, individuals from various ethnic backgrounds who fell victim to Japan's imperial ambitions. And some Allied prisoners, soldiers, captured on the battlefield who were then subjected to the same brutal treatment as the other victims. They called their human test subjects Maruta, a term that stripped them of their humanity, logs, implying that they were nothing more than expendable pieces of wood, devoid of feelings or worth. Dehumanization made the atrocities easier, allowing the perpetrators to distance themselves from the suffering they inflicted. Prisoners were deliberately infected with plague, one of the deadliest diseases known to humankind. Anthrax, a highly contagious and often fatal bacterial infection. Cholera, a waterborne disease that causes severe dehydration and can lead to death within hours. Vivisections, live dissections, the cutting open of living beings, were performed without anesthesia, inflicting excruciating pain on the victims. Frostbite experiments, subjecting prisoners to extreme cold to study the effects of hypothermia and tissue damage. Weapons testing, using human beings as targets to assess the effectiveness of bombs, grenades, and other weapons. Forced pregnancies, impregnating women against their will to study the effects of disease on pregnant bodies and developing fetuses. And organ removals were routine, harvesting organs from living prisoners without their consent. The suffering was unimaginable, a level of cruelty that is difficult to comprehend. Thousands died in agony, their bodies and minds broken by the horrors they endured. Many more perished in biological attacks on civilian populations, as Unit 731 tested the effectiveness of its weapons on unsuspecting communities. After the war, the horror didn't end. Instead, it was compounded by a shocking act of betrayal. The U.S. secretly granted immunity to Unit 731's leaders, shielding them from prosecution for their heinous crimes, in exchange for their research data, prioritizing scientific advancement over justice and accountability. These war criminals walked free, escaping the consequences of their actions, some even thriving in post-war Japan, rebuilding their lives while their victims remained forgotten. Justice was denied, a profound injustice that continues to haunt the memory of the victims. The victims' suffering was ignored for decades, their stories buried beneath layers of secrecy and denial. Japan denied Unit 731's existence for years, attempting to erase this dark chapter from its history. Only persistent historians and survivors' testimonies brought the truth to light, slowly chipping away at the wall of silence. The comparison to Nazi experiments is unavoidable, both representing the nadir of human depravity in the name of science. Yet Unit 731 remains less known, a testament to the power of historical amnesia and deliberate obfuscation. Its horrors obscured by silence and denial, preventing the world from fully confronting the scale of the atrocities. The legacy is profound trauma, not just for victims but for humanity, a reminder of the depths to which we can sink. Unit 731 is a warning, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the erosion of ethical boundaries. When science is divorced from ethics and people are dehumanized, when human beings are treated as mere objects for experimentation, atrocity follows. The consequences are devastating and long-lasting. The cover-up and immunity deals add insult to injury, compounding the pain and suffering of the victims and their families. Political expediency trumped justice, sacrificing the pursuit of truth and accountability for short-term political gains. The victims were denied even the dignity of acknowledgement, their names and stories erased from the historical record. Learning about Unit 731 forces us to confront the darkest corners of human nature, the capacity for cruelty and the willingness to commit unspeakable acts. It's a story that must be told, remembered, and learned from, to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. The silence allowed wounds to fester, preventing healing and reconciliation. We owe it to the victims to remember and demand accountability, to ensure that their suffering was not in vain. Unit 731 is a name that should be synonymous with the worst war crimes in history, a symbol of the depths of human depravity. Its horrors must never be repeated, a solemn vow to prevent such atrocities from ever occurring again. The world must know and never forget the lessons of Unit 731. Education and status don't prevent evil, only vigilance and empathy do. A constant awareness of the potential for abuse and a deep understanding of the suffering of others. The story of Unit 731 is a call to remember the victims and to fight denial and silence, to ensure that their stories are never forgotten. We must confront the past, no matter how painful, to learn from our mistakes and prevent future atrocities. Only then can we hope to prevent such horrors in the future by fostering a culture of empathy, accountability, and respect for human dignity. The truth matters, even decades later, because it is essential for healing, reconciliation, and the prevention of future atrocities. Let's honor the victims by never letting their suffering be forgotten, by ensuring that their stories are told and their memories are cherished. On to the final thoughts. We've journeyed through some of history's darkest secrets. MK Project Artichoke, Unit 731. These weren't just mistakes. They were calculated descents into inhumanity hidden by secrecy and denial. It makes you wonder what else is still hidden, which story hit you hardest. Let me know in the comments. We need to talk about this, even if it's uncomfortable. If you want more deep dives, like and subscribe. There's so much more beneath the surface. Stay safe, question everything, and remember, the truth matters. Until next time.